Okay, so get this. Today's deep dive, we're going to be unearthing some hidden wisdom. And you might be surprised where we find it.
Oh, this is going to be good. I love a good treasure hunt. Tell me more.
We're diving into a children's poem, Walking in the Snow, and a podcast episode, Life Lessons Unplugged, both about, well, winter.
Really?
You,
Winter. That's where we're searching for wisdom today.
yeah, you heard that right.
Yeah.
And believe me, it's way more profound than you might think. Just picture this. This kid wandering through a snowy landscape, bare trees, a frozen lake. It's stark beauty, like in that poem, Walking in the Snow.
Okay, I was trying to get a sense of the vibe, kind of isolated and quiet.
Exactly. And that feeling of being lost, not knowing where to go. It's like a metaphor for life, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
We've all felt that at some point. Like, which way do I turn? What's the right path?
It's like when you're walking in a snowy forest and everything looks the same. You lose your bearings completely. And that's where both the poem and this podcast really hone in on this deep longing for home.
Home. It's such a loaded word, isn't it?
Right. It's more than just a place. It's that feeling of like warmth and safety and love.
Absolutely. It's like this beacon of light in the middle of all the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about that basic human need to belong, to feel connected. Having a home base, whether it's an actual place or even just a feeling, can really help us bounce back when life throws curveballs.
It's less about the bricks and mortar and more about feeling anchored, like you have a safe harbor. Makes you think about how we create those homes for ourselves, both internally and in our relationships.
Definitely. It's something to ponder.
You know what else is interesting? How both these sources use winter as this incredibly powerful metaphor.
Ooh, tell me more about that. It's not just the typical winter is coming kind of thing.
Not at all. It's more like, think bare branches, a frozen lake, complete stillness. It's like nature itself is taking this deep breath.
Whoa, I love that. Like nature itself is taking a deep breath. That's deep. It's
Yeah.
like everything is just pausing, gathering energy for what comes next.
Yes, it's not just about things being dormant, but about the potential that's hitting within that quiet time.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like we talk about spring cleaning, but maybe we need a little winter reflection
Wow.
too, right?
Yeah.
Those times when we go inward can be just as important for growth as when we're outwardly doing things. Life has its own natural rhythms, just like the seasons.
Think about those times in your life when you felt stuck, like in a holding pattern. Maybe you were dealing with a setback or you just felt blah. That's winter's metaphor in action. Even when things seem quiet or unproductive, change is still happening under the surface.
We're gathering strength, just like nature does in winter, getting ready for a new season of growth. And that's where resilience comes in.
Okay, so speaking of resilience, it's like, how do we tap into that when things get tough? I mean, both the poem and that podcast, they both show how those characters, they find this like inner strength,
Right. It's like they had this reserve of resilience they didn't even know about. And the cool thing is, understanding that, the psychology of resilience, it can be so empowering for all of us.
So it's not about like being super tough and ignoring problems.
Not at all. It's more about learning to tap into those inner resources we all have. Think of it like a toolkit for navigating tough times.
Okay, I like that. A resilience toolkit. So what's in it?
Well, remember in the poem how the child focuses on those sensory details? Like the smell of cinnamon rolls leading them home?
Oh, yeah, that was such a vivid image.
Exactly. It's about holding on to hope, even when things are uncertain. And then Ponytail, in the podcast, they talk about this inner fire, that determination to keep going no matter what.
Inner fire. I love that. Makes you think, what are some practical things we can do to like spark that fire within ourselves when we're facing our own metaphorical winters?
Such a good question. Sometimes, it's as simple as focusing on what we can control.
Okay, so like baby steps.
Kind of. Even if it's just taking that next step, putting one foot in front of the other, it's about choosing hope, choosing action, even when it's hard.
It's like they say, action creates motivation. Sometimes just getting started is the biggest hurdle. But speaking of finding your way back, I have to ask you about that story Ponytail told about their dog, Shoelaces, getting lost in the snow. Talk about a winter challenge, even within the podcast story. That little anecdote was so powerful.
Oh my gosh, yes. That story, it was like a punch to the gut, the fear, the despair of losing a pet you love so much. And then that wave of relief and joy when Shoelaces finds his way back home.
My heart was racing just listening to Ponytail describe it. You could feel that bond they had with Shoelaces.
It just goes to show you, right? That cyclical nature of life, it's not just some abstract idea. It's happening in our everyday experiences. And it reminds us that even when things feel dark or hopeless, there's always a chance for things to turn around, to find our way back to where we belong, just like Shoelace did.
It's like that feeling of relief when you finally find your way back. It makes all those struggles, all those wrong turns worth it.
Totally. We appreciate those moments of warmth and connection even more because we had to go through those tough times to get there.
And it's funny, right? Like, we started with this children's poem and a podcast about life lessons. And somehow we ended up talking about resilience and perseverance and these, like, universal truths about life itself.
It's amazing, isn't it? The power of stories. They give us these new ways to understand our own experiences. We connect with those universal human truths, even in the simplest narratives.
Totally. It's like finding buried treasure. Unearthing this wisdom in the most unexpected places. Those lessons are everywhere if we know where to look.
Absolutely. They're not just in poems and podcasts. They're in our everyday lives, even in those tough wintry moments.
So true. Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of unpacking winter's wisdom for today.
I think so too. And, it leaves me thinking, how can each of us take these lessons, these ideas about resilience and trusting in the cycles of life and apply them to our own lives?
That's a really good question. It's something to ponder, maybe on a cozy winter day with a warm drink in hand.
Definitely.
Well, on that note, this has been quite the deep dive. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This was great.